This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 347 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast about walking and running on your travels. I'd firstly like to pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation where I'm recording this podcast today. Now, you know that I love slow travel, and one way to do some really slow travel is to get around on foot. Whether you're like walking or hiking or running, however you use your feet, I think this pace is a really cool way to see a place from a different perspective to the usual tourist. So today's guests have all had interesting experiences walking or running or something in between. Now, I am never going to do a marathon. Honestly, you can totally hold me to that. But I have done a couple of week-long hikes, and I totally love to just wander around a new place on foot too. In today's episode, we'll travel as far and wide as Paris, the Congo, and the Grand Canyon, all by foot power, in fact. My first guest is Chelsea Gruber, who is an experienced solo traveller who also loves a physical challenge, and she starts out by telling me some of the interesting trips she's done in recent years.
I've always been a bit of an active person. I think I get that from my dad. We grew up doing races together and triathlons. We did one in Cuba together one year. And then it kind of just became, he always did, like he would go to other countries and he would do like marathons and all this other sort of stuff. So it was something that I kind of took on through him. And so the very first one, I think it was I did the Cuba triathlon with him in 2019. And then in 2021, I decided to go on a hiking trip to the Swiss Alps. And it wasn't like it's not like I was like, climbing up the Matterhorn or something. But it was just kind of a step into a little bit more of an adventure travel just to see what it was like. And so I went to Zermatt and I went to St. Moritz and I just, downloaded all trails, stayed in just found some hiking routes around there. I didn't do anything more than like 6 miles or whatever each day. But it was really cool because it was that extra level on top of the solo travel challenge in itself. It was just that extra level of, wow, I can do this like all by myself. And so then the next year after that, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for something for a little bit more. So that's when I decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And I had no idea what to expect with this. All I knew was that it was the highest peak in Africa. And oh my gosh, what an incredible life-changing thing. Like I recommend everybody because it's not a hard climb. I think if anything, it's just more mental. It's not physically like awful. It's very, very mental. And so between the mental and the physical challenge of climbing Kilimanjaro, I think I summited in 3 days, which was pretty fast. So I got kind of sick, but that was all I had time for. Last year, I did my first mountaineering experience, which I stayed in the US, but I did Mount Rainier, which is a peak right outside of Seattle. So I had to learn, how to get the ice axes and all the different gear and learn how to do that. And that was...
Was it scary?
It was scary. It was scary. It was cold. It was long. Like it was just like when I look back on the whole experience, it just seems like a blur. Definitely a lot more of a physical challenge than Kilimanjaro. And then this year, my thing is I'm going to run the Paris Marathon in April, and that'll be my first marathon. So I've been training for that. It's been brutal, but I'm very excited.
Oh, that is insane. I'm not a runner. I will walk all day, and I've done some wonderful like hiking, easy hiking, but long trips. But a marathon is something you'll never get me to do, I don't think.
I always said that. And I don't know. I think it was just because I couldn't think of anything else to do this year. And I had done a half in January and I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just what I just did twice. But no, I completely get it. I've never been the one who's been like, oh yeah. Like I'll just go to run a marathon. No big deal. It's
a big deal.
It's a big deal. And then on top of that, in another country, and they've been sending me emails, and everything's in French, and then I have to I don't know what's going on.
What made you choose the Paris Marathon of all the marathons in the world?
The timing, it just seemed very serendipitous. I had kind of been planning a trip to London for work. they're close together, and the time with the training of when I ran the half in January, everything just kind of worked out. So I had been deciding between doing that or doing like a hike around Everest Base Camp. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna bite the bullet. I just want to do one marathon before, once in my lifetime. This will be it. I'm never gonna run again after this. So yeah, it just worked out, and there was an open spot, and everything just came together very easily. So that's how I knew.
Oh, that sounds great. I mean, I imagine of many places in the world where you could run a marathon, the Paris version must be pretty scenic. It must be an enjoyable route.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine like the route? And I mean, just you go all around the Seine River, and I mean, you see all of the landmarks. And ironically, my mom and my sister are going to be there doing like a mother-daughter trip at the same time.
Oh.
So they're going to be able to cheer. Well, if they wake up in time, they'll be able to cheer me on at the finish line.
I hope they wake up in time for you.
I know, I hope they do too. But yeah, I mean, what a beautiful way to explore a city.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And surely that must give you a little bit of a boost while you're running.
Absolutely. Like, I won't know what I won't know if they're yelling good things or bad things or telling me I'm slow, but either way, it'll definitely be some motivation.
Since I recorded that chat with Chelsea, the Paris Marathon has been and gone, and Chelsea made it. She did it. And I just thought to summarize that, I'd share our Instagram conversation from shortly after. So I wrote, "Huge congrats, you crazy woman. Well done. Ready for next marathon now?" And Chelsea's reply was, "Nope, never running again. Ha ha ha." I suspect she will run again, but perhaps not another marathon. And perhaps the day after the marathon wasn't the right time to be talking about it. Anyway, my next guest today is Patrick Nash, who has had some incredible experiences travelling through Africa. And in this chat, he tells me about a particularly long walk in the Congo.
I did, and then with my good friend Rob, who I met, we basically did the Congo together.
Tell me about this.
So we walked the Congo. We didn't always walk. We hitchhiked some of the time. But in particular, we walked through Zaire, as it then was. And we'd sort of walked and hitchhiked up the east. I don't know if you know the geography of that, but sort of up. We'd come in from Uganda, from southwest Uganda, the town of Goma, which is, for all the wrong reasons, back in the news again at the moment. Terrible, terrible, terrible stuff. And we walked up what's called the Virunga Mountains, which kind of go up the east of the country and then border the Ruwenzoris on the west, which are in Uganda, more or less. And it was a very exciting part of the journey, very fulfilling part of the journey. Most days we would set off walking. We'd probably walk about 20 miles. So that's 36 kilometers on a dirt road through the rainforest. I mean, walking was perfect because once you're down out the mountains, it's pretty flat. There's tall trees either side of effectively a single track, dirt track that goes for 100. I mean, it may be a road now for all I know, but then that's what it was.
So shady.
It was shady, exactly.
Shady and flat. That's actually my favourite kind of walking.
Yeah, it's a good way to walk. And there was company. So what was lovely is that people walked from village to village, often carrying produce to sell at markets or visiting friends and family. So there were conversations, there was singing, there was even people had little instruments they'd play. Oh, I mean, it was actually kind of a beautiful experience. And we'd join in. We were a source of great amusement and interest.
I was going to say, there are probably not many foreigners walking. No,
the bulk of foreigners would go on those big trucks with telephoto lenses sticking out, which were not popular. I mean, they were obviously popular for young travellers in those days, but we decided not to do that. Anyway, towards the end of our first day walking in the forest, a young teenager came up to us and he said, "My village is waiting for you. It's only 20 minutes walk away." And I went, "Okay." So we set off with him. When we arrived, the men and the women in the village were waiting for us. Fire pit was flaming. There was smoke to keep the mozzies at bay. Food was being prepared. We were shown each to a little family home where we'd be sleeping on the floor for the night, which is, super generous with the family. They even seemed to know we were vegetarian. Because the meal was a stew of vegetables and beans on a bed of manioc, which is a kind of cassava. And we sat eating with the adults, about 20 of them or so. They wanted to know where we're from and why we were walking through the forest. And they were very surprised that Westerners they couldn't really grasp why we were doing that. And to be honest, I'm not even sure we had a very good answer to that question.
I was just going to say, what was your answer? Just to see the country.
We're traveling by foot. We're a little bit different. However, the really exciting bit, or the really interesting bit, was that as the meal drew to an end, one of the older men said, "Will you please talk to our young people?" At this point, the young people, and to be fair, I think it's fair to say that the young men of the village came and the adults left us. And we talked for an hour or so with the teenagers. I mean, they spoke pretty good French.
Right.
And they shared their ambitions, which for many of them was to go to Brussels, Paris or London, where they thought they'd get wealth. And we trod a really fine line between telling about poverty, unemployment, racism, attitude to migrants, of which, I wasn't wildly knowledgeable, but knowledgeable enough, I had enough. And on the other hand, being supportive of their ambitions. I mean, it's quite a difficult path to tread.
Yes. You want to say, oh, you've got no chance.
You can't do that. That's just, no, you can't destroy that.
And unprepared for this is thrust upon you.
Yeah, so. It wasn't, they were just lovely, lovely boys, really. And, they were sort of a little bit younger and in some cases about our age. So, it was it was a great discussion. But what's fascinating is that word gets round in the forest because people walk between villages. That became the pattern of almost every evening on our trip.
Wow.
It was extraordinary. I mean, which was such a privilege. Just extraordinary.
So someone would find you and say, here,
someone would appear.
Our village is waiting.
They're waiting. Dinner is being cooked. I mean, it was just extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. So I think in that part of the journey, I felt, very close to nature, but more importantly, very close to these just beautiful, kind, generous, warm people with so little and yet so much.
That truly is an amazing walk. And I love the way that it brought them closer to the people as well. My final guest today is Amy Willis, who also likes to travel in an active way. And her first story is about a particularly tough way to see the Grand Canyon.
So I got sober in 2015, and when did I do it? In 2022 was my 7-year anniversary, and I wanted to do something big and life-affirming and scary. And I'm a part of a trail running group here in Austin, and a bunch of people do rim to rim to rim, like it's no big deal. So I just kind of jumped on the bandwagon, like maybe I could do this too.
Can you explain what it is for people who are not local to that area?
Sure, yes. So you start at the South Rim, and it's a 24-ish mile across to the North Rim, and then you go back. So total, it's like 47 miles through the canyon. So you dip down in, it's like a 4-mile run down into the canyon, and then it's flat, and then you go back out, and then you go back. So it's a pretty big undertaking. But this is the stuff I like to do, and I really wanted to memorialize my accomplishment. And so me and another friend did it. And yeah, it was a really, really tough time. I had to dig deep. I wanted to quit. When I got to the North Rim, I was like, if a shuttle comes by, I'm getting on it.
Did you really think that?
Yes, I said that out loud. And then my friend had to talk me off the cliff. And yeah, she just kind of reminded me of all the struggles I've overcome in life. And, she just pepped me back up, and I just went back in, and there's only one way out of the canyon. So you kind of just have to get out eventually, no matter how long it takes.
That is crazy. But you've done other big running things too. Tell us more.
Well, I did my first 100-mile race in October outside of Phoenix, Scottsdale area in Arizona. So that was 100 miles through the desert again. So a theme of mine is just running in hot places. And that has been something I've been trying to check off my bucket list for about 8 years now. I had tried the distance before and DNF'd twice. I didn't finish. And so this was my last chance. I was like, if I don't get it this time, it's not meant to be, or my body can't do it.
Wow.
But I finally got it with 30 minutes to spare on the on the clock. It took 29 and a half hours of running in the desert. It was the hardest thing. I still get PTSD thinking about it.
And I can't quite imagine what makes people like you decide this is a good idea.
That's a very good question. Yeah, I think it goes along with the sobriety thing where I'm just like, I'm finally alive and awake and I want to just live life and do all these bucket list items that have been on my long list for years and years. Each year I just pick one and I'm like, all right, this is what we're doing. And so far it's just worked out. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm kind of being led on a path and kind of guided to these big adventures, and luckily they've all been okay. So,
or not just okay, but quite amazing by the sounds of some of them.
Yes, but I've never had anything bad happen, luckily, and yeah, I've been in some precarious situations out in the wilderness.
Amy and I went on to chat about a bunch of other experiences she's had, but my favourite was when she told me about a recent trip to Kenya where she achieved one of her running goals.
So it was about 2 weeks through northern Kenya. So 5 different conservancies. We just did everything. We did all the activities. I got to run with the Samburu, which was one of my bucket list things, is to run with the Maasai or one of the tribes out there.
What was that like?
That was also insane. So all of my experiences end up being insane. But this was another situation where I was like, oh, this is a 6-mile run. No problem. I do that all the time.
Famous last words.
And it was just after the rainy season. So the grasses were up to my shoulders, and there's no trail, by the way. You're just running through the bush, and I'm following the Samburu, trying to keep up, and I'm getting poked and prodded by every thorn in Africa. And, you're just in the bush. And I was wearing tank top and shorts, and I see my guide is in long sleeves and pants, and I was like, oh God, I've messed up terribly. I'm bleeding everywhere. My skin is in a rash, and it was crazy. But I was like, I can't believe I just did that. I got to just run through, the Kenya wild bushland. It's just another moment where I'm like, I can't believe my life.
Oh, that is amazing. How did your speed compare to these Kenyans?
It was terrible.
They're pretty fast, right?
Yes. And he was like, do you want to run up this hill? And I was like, I do not. I want to hike. Thank you. Because everybody was like, oh, the ultra runner is coming. We got to take her running.
Oh,
and so it was the hype was built up. And then I was like, wow, that took me 2 hours to do.
To do the 6 miles?
Yes. 2 hours. So I was like, and we're humbled again. Constantly humbled.
Oh, good life lesson, of course. But wow, how fascinating, though. What an amazing experience.
Yeah. And there was one part where we climbed up this hill and we just sat there and looked out. And I was like, this is why I run. And he was like, me too. And I was like, nice. Good moment for us.
Cross-cultural connections.
Yeah, it's just these amazing views that you can't see if you're just, in a safari truck or maybe doing a shorter hike. It's you get to really get out there and be one with the wild. So it's pretty cool.
Sounds like such an incredible experience. And I love Amy's point about how you can often reach views and viewpoints that others can't see if you're taking on a walk or run. I've definitely had some of those special views on hiking trips that will forever remain real core memories for me. So thank you so much for listening to episode 347 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. I hope I've given you some ideas on being active when you travel, or at least my guests have, because you're never going to get marathon advice from me. A massive thank you to those guests. So first up, I chatted with Chelsea Gruber, and you can find out more about Chelsea at chelseasolotravels.com. Also, great resource if you're looking to travel solo, or follow her on Instagram, Chelsea Solo Travels. I then chatted with Patrick Nash. Patrick's a writer now, and you can hear more about his work at patricknash.co.uk. And I'm going to leave a link to his most recent book, Shots Across the Water, Tales of a Journey Through Africa, which includes more stories like the one he told us from the Congo in this episode. And finally, I chatted with Amy Willis from Kerr & Downey at kerrdowney.com. They're a travel design company creating very unique and individual travel experiences. And you can also see Amy on Instagram at Amy N. Willis. I'm also going to link up in the show notes to a few other podcast episodes which take on this idea of walking, etc., especially walking, I think, when you travel. Episode 253 on walking the world, which includes some great stories of long walks, let's say. Similarly, episode 175 on walking and hiking travels. And in episode 308, one of my favourites, it's my own trip report with my friend Catherine from when we hiked the Basho Trail with Walk Japan in 2023. Don't forget to come along to the Facebook or LinkedIn groups. You can just search for Thoughtful Travellers on those platforms and find us there and chat about your own experiences. And do sign up for the Thoughtful Travellers newsletter at Substack. You can find that at thoughtfultravel.substack.com. It includes some of the other news like our book club, Thoughtful Travellers Book Club is being reunited, let's say. So you can find out about that in the social media groups or at Substack. All of these links and more will be in the show notes, and for this episode you can find them at notaballerina.com/347. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.